begin.
Okay.
Good morning, good afternoon, Aristo. The,
Good good afternoon, good morning, Ron.
yeah, the topic that I'd like you to talk about today follows up on your comments on yesterday's video, and that is the challenge of integrating opposites. And I thought what you wrote was excellent. Well, they usually are, but I mean, I really thought that was interesting because you mentioned that the dark has as much problem integrating the light as many light workers have integrating the dark. And I think that would be something I'd like you to go into in a little more detail, perhaps, and certainly in the audio version so that people can hear what you had to say.
Exactly. What I wrote yesterday, I forgot what your video was about yesterday, but it seemed to be relevant to that topic, but not directly so. It just seemed that, well, the energy of what you were saying was moving in that direction.
Well, the
But
world waits for the big event was the title.
exactly. And the big event, what came to my mind was that the big event, quote unquote, is perceived by both the so-called darkies and the so-called light workers. And these are just two idealistic, esoterically inclined aspects of a broader spectrum. Because I was involved in occultism and esoteric stuff, originally I would basically be just into mysticism for about a decade, but maybe 15 years, I guess. But over time, I started naturally coming into contact with other people interested in the same things. And then eventually I would come in contact into people who ended up being proven that they were occultists doing black magic and things like that. Um, some of them were out in the open and some of them were just hidden about it. At the same time, I had a friend, I was living in Ohio, and I had a friend who found himself in the middle of, back in the 80s, they had Satanist candles, and they said that it's all BS and there are none, and that is just hype. But he claimed that it wasn't hype, that there were people doing things, that they were stealing babies, and there were murders, there was this. And eventually I realized that, yes, there are groups of people, some of them in high places, some of them just, your average run-of-the-mill citizens, so to speak, usually from rural areas, that are involved in these things. And so,
Interestingly, Aristo, I have a friend that lives up in Ohio that I've had some communication with who was involved in some of that stuff in years back. Uh, she's very much now working on the light side, but she's very familiar with what you're talking about. And I don't know about the time frame, whether it was in the 80s that she was involved, but I know she was involved in some time past in that general vicinity.
It was, yeah. My friend basically was a teenager back then, and what happened was that they started targeting him. The thing with Ohio is that it's an ancient Indian ritual spot, along with West Virginia, Western Pennsylvania, that whole area. It's full of mounds, and
Yes.
it's full of, and I mean, I visited these places, and I can attest to the fact that they are PowerPoints, and when I was visiting them, there's always people doing stuff. And my friend and I would just go around and just kick them out, basically by not kicking them physically out, but basically being in the corner and psychically diluting what they were doing, because it was never pleasant. I mean, you would think the New Agers, and I hate to generalize the term, but a lot of people are a little naive about these things. And when they're not naive, then they go into this other extreme of the media hype about these things. It really has nothing to do with religion. It's a kind of spirituality of resentment, you might say. I've met a lot of people that aren't officially like this. They don't label themselves. And there's a lot of people who call themselves Satanists that have a certain antinomian ideology. Basically, they're against the system. Since the system, for them, they grew up in a Judeo-Christian environment, then they're revolting against the environment by basically, calling themselves Satanists. So, they're not like hateful people or anything like that. But there are others who may or may not be of that official label, and usually they're not. but they do have a kind of, maybe not even officially worshiping the so-called dark, because a lot of them channel light, but it's a cold type of light. Basically, you have a promotion of love as an ideal on the one side, and then a promotion of power as an ideal on the other side. And both of these sides are basically, they should be one single thing, and there's a very difficult, people have a difficult time of integrating it. And I'm not saying this as one who has been absolutely successful in doing so, but I can attest that if you even make a move to do so, you're going to confront so much fear and so much what you might call negativity. And it's not just the negativity of the dark side, it's the negativity the dark side tries to push away from themselves whenever they come into this boundary, you know, because from their perspective, they want to control everything because they want to integrate, but the only way they can experience integration is control. Now, the so-called light side at the same time they use power as a weapon of denial and pseudo-integration. The light side at the same time uses love as a weapon of denial and pseudo-integration. Now, the thing is, when I used to talk to the people on forums who were of the so-called left-hand disposition, they would be resentful when I would, elaborate on things in such a manner. In the same way, it's very probable that people who are into light working and stuff may feel resentful in me pointing out that, look, when you look really, really deep inside, there's a place that you don't want to face. And in that place, it's possible to take the very ideal of love that, I'm speaking generally. When I say you, I'm not talking about you.
I understand.
But the general ideal of love all of a sudden is like you automatically, almost reflexively, use it as a shield against what you don't want to face. And this isn't far-fetched in the sense that we all know that many light worker types promote projecting love. And it's like, how do you, that really doesn't make sense. The nature of love is all permeating and personal. It's always personal. It cannot be an impersonal force. So if you turn it into an impersonal force, it may be mutually personal, but it's always personal. So if you turn it into an impersonal force, you are turning it into a weapon or a tool for a purpose. And love cannot be turned into a tool. It's too intimate for that. So the thing that light workers may realize theoretically, and that the so-called dark workers don't realize at all, but also have a sense of it from another perspective, is that what light workers and dark workers are afraid of is the same thing. It's the merger of love and power. Light workers would say, well, the merger of love and power is just true love. And dark workers would say, well, the merger of love and power is true power. Of course, they view love as something disempowering. They don't trust it. Many have been betrayed, but others harbor even deeper karmic dynamics, just like some light workers harbor even deeper karmic dynamics of denial that don't allow them or forge blocks to their identifying with their planetary incarnation. And so, some people say, well, I'm an alien. And I will have to beg to disagree because nobody on this planet with a human body is an alien. It doesn't matter. I mean, maybe I was Chinese in my past life. Do I go around saying, well, I'm really Chinese? No. I was a woman in past life, for example. But do I go around saying I'm a woman? I mean, does everybody who's been a woman in some past life have to be effeminate or homosexual or whatever? That's not true either. The here and now of the incarnation, no matter what karma you have, puts you in a new physical precedence that supplies you with resources of embodiment so you can deal with all those patterns. That's why it's easier to deal with past karma than it is to deal with present karma. It's easier to forgive yourself, for example, for any kind of past life situations than it is for present life situations. But the thing is that many light workers, many people generally, even neutral people or whatever, say, well, if so many people are meditating things going well in the world, why don't good things happen? And I have to say that my experience of the energy of a light worker meditation compared to the experience of dark worker meditation, the dark worker is far more committed than the light worker is. The light worker is like, well, as soon as I feel negativity, I got to, they spend energy turning away from negativity. And much of it is a matter of degree. For example, you may not turn away from negativity as a matter of course, but there may be a point where you say, well, okay, 5 minutes is enough. You mentioned in your video today, that, well, it's fine to have it a little bit, and maybe I can laugh it off or I can tell it. And I have to say that, well, that's not really negativity then. It's a mild precursor, because the real issues are the ones that really are serious. The feelings that come through are the ones that people, the only way they'll have them run through their bodies, unless they're awakened in some way and consciously choosing to do so, is if they're forced to do so. So you think about it that way. You take all of the experiences, for example, of an event of the police event, and if you can take all of those feelings and relive them without going through the physical event, and then be able to combine that with a more open, loving disposition at the same time, you experience what is called an existential gap. This is basically the rift of separation between various polarized dynamics. This rift of separation is not empty. If it were empty, it would be no problem. If it were just a void, it would be no problem. What it harbors is every possibility and force of actualization that nobody wants to face, every possibility that nobody wants. And it's not a bad not to want such possibilities. However, the possibilities are patterns of a medium that is our own essence. So when you reject the possibilities, you all reject the essence. The key is to embody the essence so you can change the possibility. You can't alter the program, so to speak, unless you get into the computer. You can't change the software unless you embody the hardware locally where it is. And the thing is, neither the so-called dark workers nor the light workers want to do that. Now, the trick here is that dark workers work on overt deception. Light workers work on covert deception. And again, light workers might disagree with what I'm saying, but I'm saying that the deception is subconscious. They really don't admit. For example, somebody might say, well, I'm on top of the mountain and I'm fine, and you poor you, you're suffering. This has nothing again to do with any personal examples. But I know people will go that way, but come on, we see it all the time. It's not just one example. And I read it in channeled messages, and I see people express it in different videos and written works, and it's all over the place amongst the so-called light worker community. I'm on top of the mountain, I'm detached, and you're down there, and as soon as you can come where I am and stay there, we're going to be fine.
Yeah, again, I get that all the time, because I'm in the middle of a light worker community, so to speak. And my biggest frustration is that people tend to look at me and say, Ron, you're negative. You've got to release all of these attachments to things. And, like I could snap my fingers and just make all of the anxiety regarding my house go away, or the anxiety regarding my friend in Canada being able to cross the border and stuff like that. Just release it. Now, in regard to my friend in Canada, I have pretty much said, okay, God, you know the time, you know the hows, you know what's best. I'm just going to put it in your hands. So I've adopted on that one a place of neutrality. And yet I was talking to her last night, and I said, I was making comments about the geopolitical situation in the world, and she says, you're not sounding very neutral. And I says, well, I'm not neutral regarding the world, because that affects everybody, and I want to see the changes to make a world that works for everybody. So I'm not neutral about that. I am very attached to having a world of peace. But in my personal life, I can be neutral. If she's my soulmate and something and we're supposed to get together, it'll happen. If she's not, it won't happen. And I've resigned myself to that and entered a place of neutrality, if that makes any sense at all.
Yes, it does. Because you are, let's say, from what I understand, how I feel the thing, is that you come to a position where you are moving to accept your reality so you can create your reality at the personal realm. You're confident about it, even though the situation isn't manifesting as you would like it. It's just a matter of time, eventually, because the force of desire is there. Whereas with a global situation, you feel powerless, and you need to compensate for that. But I would like to say, if somebody believes I'm not neutral, then let's shift from a discussion of ideas into a discussion of feeling. How does, where's the fear? What's the fear about not being neutral? Exactly. Where does it go? What are the implications of me not being neutral that create anxiety in the other person? Are they afraid that I'm going to turn into a monster if I'm not neutral? Are they afraid that I'm going to just go crazy and start getting revenge on people, or that I'll just start throwing Molotov cocktails? Or that as soon as I start feeling, I'm going to start attracting things and they're going to be collateral damage? It's like, you can feel if that's where you are, but just get out of my way and don't let me participate. And I say, well, what's going to happen when God, to put it one way, comes and tells you, look, dude, sorry, you can't do that anymore? And my whole esoteric prayer, meditation, whatever, is that, well, God, if you're going to do that to the light workers, you're going to do that to the dark workers. Everybody is going to basically realize that denial is not an option. I don't care where you are.
Oh, I like that.
Exactly. I don't care what these people say about me, as far as, well, you're being judgmental or you're being this or that. I don't care. My esoteric experience, my connection, not just on top of the mountain, because, in my experience, there is the on top of the mountain, there's the bottom of the mountain, and then there's the becoming the mountain. That's the whole point of integrating these things. When you are the mountain, nothing can shake you. And it's not just that nothing can shake you, but you are a presence to be reckoned with, even if you're just one person. And I don't mean dramatic, overt, bullet-dodging capacities. I mean things where other people don't have to sit around and freak out about them visibly, because they're not ready. If you're ready, then you will have an internalized, visible understanding of how these probabilities operate. People who channel do not have this understanding beyond a certain point because they're not present. Just the fact that you're channeling means that something is giving you a long-distance call and it's way over there. How the heck does it know what's going on over here when there's so much chaos that people over here can barely keep their eyes open? So, people are relying on, it's like, your world is falling apart around you, and you call your friend in some other country where things are fine, and you ask him how things are going on in your backyard. You can't expect these people to actually, what they're going to do is say, look, man, things are pretty peaceful where I am, so they must be peaceful where you are. Don't worry about it. It's all in your head or whatever. And so people need to realize the limitations of all these things of channeling and this and that. And these limitations are there for a reason. This is the challenge of what you said, the inside job dynamic. And my thing is that if you look at the David Icke's video, and you mentioned something about it in one of your past videos, he said that this is the beginning of the end, but more likely the end of the beginning. And truly, up until now, there was a preparation. And people have held back, and there was a massive world prayer, and I can sense these things, I feel. For the most part, the important thing was the majority of humanity to stop clenching their anuses, stop tensing at the primal level of please don't let anything change. And this is what the establishment has been promoting, that, well, if you don't give us everything you got, we're going to make everything change. And it's like, we are challenged to come to a point where we can say, well, bring it on, but on my terms. And that I'm not afraid of change because I have experienced it on the inside. Here's another detail that in which you might be interested as far as transforming fear is concerned. And occasionally, my top of the mountain experiences are more or less regular for about an hour in the morning. And on my part, I've spent about 7 years forging a single mantra of 64 syllables that's made of other power mantras that exist in the traditions and all of that. But it's taken that long to actually put it together in the way that it works. And it's still being circulated and charged, and it's still transforming. The reason this occurred is because the environment now is way more inhibited because of all these things coming to the surface than it ever was. So you may have somebody who may have been a top-class mystic master, who knows what, 2,000 years ago or 1,000 years ago or 500 years ago. But today, they're basically, what's going on? There's a lot of people who have been powered in this way in the past. A lot of people who claim they're ETs, yes or whether they are or not or whatever, in the past scenario, that are still stuck on the fact that, hey, man, it should be easy. It's a lot easier in the past. How come it's not easier now? And I'm encouraging them to get over that and get into the way things are in the present so they can be able to deal with it. It's like, yes, the ante has been cranked up because at no time in the past has all of this come to the surface to be addressed and integrated. To say it's not easy is beyond an understatement. So when someone says this is the end of the beginning, the time of preparation is more or less over. You don't need any more preparation. You don't need any more deliberation about, well, how do we get along and whatever. This is being thrown into the water internally, not in the sense that the world outside is going to fall apart. But, the possibility, for years and years, we've been proving that, look, man, focusing on the negative. I should be dead now. I've been focusing on the negative for years, for decades now. I should be dead. In fact, I owe my life to the fact that I've been focusing on the negative. If I hadn't, then it would have blindsided me. And this has happened several times before that until I learned my lesson. But the situation is far more intense right now. So the point is that feelings are going to come that you cannot laugh off. Because if you're in the middle of Syria and little kids are getting their heads blown off, you can't laugh that off. What's going on is that and so what's going on is that we're experiencing Syria from within. And we're very fortunate, and we should be blessing the situation of being in the position that, reality is giving us enough space that we're not having the bombs and the drones falling on our head. Threats are threats, but we're talking about present moment perception. And so what I experienced basically for years, I've been going through intense fear, similar to the peak anxiety that you felt today in your video and that I felt as well. And it's kind of what we've been talking about as passive integration. You basically open up to the feeling, let it run through you, and then slowly intend and focus on love while not pressing the feeling. And this moves to a certain point that you'll begin to feel relief from the feeling. It doesn't go away. It turns into a sort of excitement. But then you encounter another shift that's to the side of the first one when you start experiencing a different kind of fear. This is the fear that, in a deep sense, it is your fear, but at the same time, the true face of it is not fear. The other person who's projecting it onto you, that's the one, they're denying that fear for themselves, and so they're projecting it onto you. Your true response to that event is rage, is outrage, because you're saying, well, from within, the channel of within, I'm experiencing and I'm honest with myself with what I'm truly afraid of and the sensations of repressed fear and all of that. But now I'm feeling a slightly different kind of energy, an energy of terrorism. And the thing is, most people are feeling this terrorism coming in combination with fear that they don't even the fear that's really their own, and they can't tell the difference. So they're faced with a very difficult situation of opening up passively to both. And I'm saying don't worry about it because they tend to merge. It's the same feeling essentially in terms of so-called fear. But you can, if you resonate in a grounded, not top of the mountain experience, but if you feel it on top of the mountain, just imagine the base of it, imagine the ground of it, and just feel the whole thing, as I said in other videos, with your whole body. The point is that, you know, when and it's not easy to do, and most people haven't gotten there yet. In my case, it's a shift experience, which means that I'm getting inklings that it's possible. I'm having 5-minute zones where a transformation is occurring, and then the onslaught starts again. And in another 10-minute zone, the onslaught starts again. Sometimes I go through a complete clearing for an hour, and then the rest of the day I can feel like, you know, if you shine the light and the cockroaches start scurrying to the corners, you know, there's whatever was pushing the fear all of a sudden got an anxiety attack, and I can feel this. But it's a tangible feeling, almost like there's a dense program in your aura that starts breaking apart and digitizing. Maybe there's an electromagnetic component to whatever pollution or bombardment is going on. But that's the sense I got. I could feel it as a tactile, almost like metallic bits breaking apart and then dissolving and then being able to circulate again. But when this happens, the attack, so to speak, because from an occult perspective, it has the same exact nature and experience as an occult attack, as a curse, as a spell. It's basically a projected program, just like light workers project love and may subconsciously have an inner unacknowledged motive to shut the other guy up because they don't want to feel their negativity. The other ones project power in order to force domination. There's nothing wrong with that in and of itself, but the intention behind it is to not only shut the guy up, but eliminate their existence, because there isn't even the pretense of love there. There's nothing. It's hatred. It's the reversal of it, because love is denied at that point. And when you do that, what do you start feeling? Some people, you might be able to do it spontaneously, because if you start feeling outrage, if you start feeling those bastards, you know, they're not going to get away with this, you know, that's a sign that you're actually converting projected fear into the true repressed emotion that you may be having, which is like guilt represses rage, for example, because it tells you that you're a bad person if you start feeling that way, and your unacknowledged aspects may come at you as other people. Proprietary light workers you usually respect may come to you and say, Ron, you're pretty much an extremist now. You need to tone down a bit. You're letting that cap of rage of that feeling come out, which means you're approaching the other side that embodies rage, whether it's natural. They're taking our rage and they're projecting their fear onto us, you know, as
yes,
well as...
I do see it that way, Aristo. And again, it's very frustrating. I mean, I've been trying for a long time and still not there of integrating the opposites in my own life. And I have had periods where people say you can't feel love and fear at the same time. Well, I'm sorry. I've been there and I have felt love and fear at the same time. I can feel, in fact, all of the emotions, whether you label them negative or positive. I can, in my quiet space, I can feel all of them playing and dancing around like inside of me. I don't know how else to explain it, but it's as if it's all there, and I'm aware of it.
Precisely, and what you're feeling are responses. It's an internalized vibration. The dance is within. It's the feminine, the esoteric feminine aspect, the yin aspect, that is basically the substratum of our experience. The yang aspect is basically the projected radiant, usually associated with consciousness, inspiriting, inspiring, enlivening. It fertilizes that feminine aspect in terms of that paradigm. So when you feel that response, the response is ingrained.
But when that vibrates, our perception, the way we're manifest, also generates an externalized dynamic. Now, as we move to focus more internally, it doesn't mean we reject the external world, but we say, look, man, the gears and the steering wheel and the brakes on a car are on the inside. I'm not going to go climb out of my car on the roof and try to drive it from the roof because, oh, now I'm on the outside and I'm more objective. I'm going to get on the inside. I'm going to look out through the windows. I'll roll out the window, but I'm going to drive it from the inside. So reality is navigated from the inside, but you're still participating. You're still grounded. You're still interacting with it. But the thing is, as you can feel fear to the limit where the body itself says, Ron, enough, and but not cross that limit. It's a limit where beyond the laughing it off thing. It's a limit where you may feel like, oh shit, I'm going to die. Or I feel like I'm having a serious panic attack and I'm going to pass out. Or something like that. Just like you go to the gym, as I said in another video, and you work out and you say, oh, I don't want to do this. This is too much. You feel the burn, so to speak. And you push it just a little bit more, but you know that the love is there. And you have that experience. Other people don't even trust the love. They think it's weak. And I believe light workers are afflicted by this, and they won't admit it for the most part. They do not trust the power of love because they cannot trust the love of power. There is a saying by Jimi Hendrix who said, I want the power of love and not the love of power. I say, well, they're one and the same. They're two different sides of the same coin. If you don't have the love of power, you don't have the love of freedom. You cannot be free if you're not empowered, because then you'll be resentful. Somebody has to take care of you. Something has to call your shots. Something has to regulate your environment because you are not capable of interacting with it. That's what power is. It's the capacity to interact and modulate the environment in accordance to your desire. So to say,
yeah, we're over 30
time is running
minutes.
out. Oh my God, I'm sorry. I don't have your image here, so my references are completely off. Okay.
The video, your video quality is very poor. I may end up having to try to find a still image of both of us and put that on as the image and just have the dialogue, just have the audio. I have to see what I have on this end. And of course I will edit out this part of it and the beginning. But this has been, I really appreciate you going into depth, and I'm sure the people that take time to listen will also appreciate what you've shared.
I hope I wasn't rambling
on
this thing. But it's a very deep topic, and as you can see, just a few words, because there's a lot of resistance. The resistance, I came to light workers now because I was with the dark workers. I wanted to understand from a perspective of interacting with people on the internet what their energy and where they're coming from. I've experienced many, many psychic attacks from the, even online. But with witnesses and all of that. But, I believe the light workers are more conscious. They have greater potential in dealing with the situation because, at least in principle, they're willing to accept it. But the thing is, the changes that we want to happen, they depend on certain locked energies within the group mind of people. And basically, in the end, it doesn't really matter as far as, the world is concerned, because either way, the gap denial is going to end. It's not just about human beings having a good time and being fulfilled. This is about the very fabric of manifestation, M-A-T-T-E-R, matter, energy, mater, the mother, actually being liberated from all of the held-in stuff that humans are challenged to accept. Not because humans have pushed it in, but because they are the position now of conscious acceptance. They are the meeting point of heaven and earth, as we know. So it's like, it's going to happen, so people shouldn't blame God or reality or anything if the internal intensity increases, because there's so many things that are denied. You're very much aware of how much denial there is. Now, I'm going to stop there because, of course, I believe we've talked a lot in the beginning, so you can edit things out and maybe find something in the middle. I'm glad of that, so that way it won't transcend the 30-minute slot.
Well, I will, if it's over, it's over. But anyway, I do appreciate it, and I really think that this is an important one for people to listen to, and we'll see how the technology of it comes out in the actual recording and the images. And as I said, I may have to just have a still image of both of us and just preserve the
Yeah,
audio.
I don't think that's a problem. I mean, but one final note is that no matter what happens, you notice the difficulties we've had are probably associated with the potential difficulty in accepting this information, not just understanding it intellectually, but actually the implications of it. So I urge people to take it all slowly and to not jump to too many conclusions, and that there's nothing personal going on here. This is the situation we are all facing. We're all in this together, and that we can get through it both individually, one at a time, in our own spaces and together. And thank you very much for the privilege of talking to you and allowing me to express all of these important things.
Thank you, Aristo, and namaste.
Namaste.